everyone. Good afternoon. You're welcome to this health seminar.
Good afternoon.
So I'll be introducing speakers, and then the speakers will have about a few minutes to speak to us about each of the sessions, and then we'll have the panel discussions afterwards. So the first speaker is Dr. Ngozi Onya. She's a 1982 graduate of the College of Medicine, University of Ibadan, and a fellow of the West African College of Physicians in Pediatrics. Her other qualifications include an executive MBA from Lagos Business School and a certificate in travel health from the International Society of Travel Health. She has, over the last 38 years, she has worked both in public and the private sectors, most notably as a medical advisor of Nigerian breweries from 2000 to 2010, and more recently as a founder and managing director of Palion Memorial Hospital since 2010. Over the last 38 years, so she has Palion Memorial Hospital has 3 branches now since 2010, and has been involved in the fight against COVID-19.
I can't hear Chineyara right now. Or am I the only one? I think she's having a network challenge.
The problem is you don't know if it's you having the problem or the speaker.
Okay, now I know I'm not the only one. Excellent. All right, I think she's having a network issue. Okay, she's back.
All right, she's back. Okay, while she's trying to get in, let me conclude Dr. Ngozi Onya's autobiography. And right, over the last 38 years, she has worked both in the public and private sectors, and most notably as the medical advisor, even for Nigerian breweries from 2020 to 2010. And of course, she's the director of the Palion Memorial Hospital, a multi-specialist hospital with 3 branches since 2010. And they've been involved in the fight against COVID-19 since March 2020. The Ikeja branch was accredited as a private treatment center for management of seriously to critically ill patients, with COVID-19, and by Lagos State in June as well, in 2020. Palion Memorial Hospital has cumulatively seen over 2,500 patients, of which about 200 have been admitted with serious to critical illness, and sadly, 27 had lost their lives. Dr. Onya is a mother and a grandmother. She is a Christian, a member of the Elevation Church, and also a member of the PISTIS Foundation. Thank you very much, ma'am. You're very much welcome.
Thank you for your introduction.
Chineye, you can please go ahead.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Network is fluctuating. Dr. Onya, please. I think you could give your. So Dr. Onya will be talking to us about COVID-19 generally, some of the facts and some of the figures and some of the fears that we've had for COVID-19, or popularly known as coronavirus. Thank you, Dr. Onya.
Okay, I thought you were going to introduce both speakers before I spoke, but okay, I'm happy to speak.
Okay, I'll introduce her after yours. Network is fluctuating. I don't want to take me off. I want to change the internet connection before.
Okay, I see.
Yes,
all right then. Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. So I'm talking to you today on COVID-19, the facts, the fears, and equitable distribution of the vaccines. I will, to an extent, follow this outline. Okay. The Elevation Church, I think, should get introduced because I recognize that not everybody on this webinar will be a member of the church. So the Elevation Church was set up by God 11 years ago to develop members to be witnesses for Christ and still empower people to achieve the highest level of distinction and greatness in life. Founded by pastors Godman and Akinlabi, our lead pastors. And I like the fact that every Sunday we are reminded that the mandate of the church is to make greatness common. And to the Elevation Church, greatness primarily means service. So the church is also focused on social service. And therefore, the PISTIS Foundation was set up in 2018 with education as its key focus and health and shelter as enablers. I like the fact that the word PISTIS means faith. We are people of faith. Pillar Memorial Hospital has been introduced to you, and so have I. I think we all know the coronavirus. The coronavirus is an RNA virus that, well, there are lots and lots of coronaviruses, but the coronavirus, the COVID-19 virus, was first detected in a man in China in December of 2019, which is why it's called COVID-19. It was declared a global pandemic in March of 2020, and the first case was diagnosed in Nigeria in February of 2020, an Italian visiting Nigeria. Since then, we all know the story of COVID. We've lost quite a few prominent citizens, especially to the virus. Okay. Talking about vaccines first. Vaccines, as we know them today, were first developed by Edward Jenner, a country doctor in the UK. And it was just using observation and experimentation, the things that doctors routinely will do, either intentionally or non-intentionally. And he once heard a cow, so he was a country doctor in a farming community, and he once heard one of the farm hands, a girl, saying, oh, she had the cowpox on her hands. Now she knows she will never get smallpox that will disfigure her face. And so he picked that up. And then he carried out an experiment on this young boy by injecting some cowpox into his arm, a big risk. But he found out that boy never developed smallpox. Before this, I think people have always known about the fact that sometimes getting exposed to a milder variant of the illness protects you from a more severe variant of the illness. And I actually recently read on social media about an African slave who actually taught someone in America. So we know that as far back as before Edward Jenner actually had come out with this big discovery of smallpox vaccine, people in Asia and Europe and colonial America, and I hear was credited to a slave, knew that if you exposed yourself to a milder variant of an illness, you were protected from a more severe form. Therefore, the word vaccine, I read yesterday that it's from the root word vaca, a Latin word for cow, because it started with the cowpox. And it reduced, the introduction of vaccines, I think, has probably been the most significant public health intervention in the last 2 centuries, reducing under 5 mortality in the United States from about 20%, which is 20 children under the age of 5. Out of every 100 children under the age of 5, 20 will die in a year, to less than 1 child in a year will die. Less than 1 child under the age of 5 will die in the US. And all this happened in a space of 100 years after the introduction of vaccinations. And I'm happily displaying my grandchildren, 2 lovely children who have been well vaccinated, and see how healthy they look. I thank God my first grandchild will be 5 years old today. Pre-vaccination, he may have been one of those who will have fallen victim to many of the childhood illnesses. So the whole approach, there are three approaches to designing a vaccine. You can use the whole microbe, the whole either bacterium or virus, and inactivate it, so sort of make it, kill it, that's it, but the whole vaccine, microbe. So an example of that is the polio vaccine, the intramuscular one, or the flu vaccine. Or you can keep it alive, but disable it a little bit, so make it less potent. And good examples of those live vaccines are the measles vaccine, the oral polio vaccine, the BCG vaccine. Or more recently, you can use the viral vector. So using a safe virus. In the case of the Oxford AstraZeneca, the virus that was used was an adenovirus that causes mild infections in the original animal, and then use that safe virus and introduce the code for any other. So more or less, the viral vector acts like a pod or a postman, and then you just implant into it the specific virus you want to vaccinate against. So this technique was actually developed for Ebola. After they felt that we didn't respond adequately to the Ebola outbreaks between 2014 and 2016, where we lost about 11,000 people globally. So some people started working already on this technique. And that's a technique being used today for the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. So it's not new technology. It's technology that has been developed over the last 5 to 6 years. So it was very quick to be able to just deploy it in the space of 1 year. But it was, like I said, it was originally developed for the Ebola vaccine. But every forward-thinking scientist knows that this, expected a pandemic of this nature. Well, not of this nature, but a pandemic of some sort. We've had the SARS, we've had the MERS, we've had Ebola. So we had Zika. So we knew that something else will come. So they were getting ready for whatever else, what they called disease X, and then disease X happened to be the COVID-19. Then you can also use parts of the organisms, so a protein like the DPT, the pneumococcal ones, and then the new genetic material. This is very, very new, very, very new. Let's not forget that it's only recently that we're able to crack the entire genetic code of humans. Okay, so this is very, very technologically advanced. But these are the 3 main approaches to designing a vaccine. And before a vaccine is launched into the market, it will go through various phases. First, a preclinical phase where it is used only in the lab. Then, after the lab finds it to be a bit useful, then it goes to the phase 1. A small group of healthy volunteers, usually less than 100, 20 to 100 volunteers. And that's to determine how safe it will be in terms of side effects, what doses we should use, what formulation. So should it be given orally, or should it be given as an intramuscular vaccine, or is spray into the nostrils, or whatever. After it's gone through the phase 1 trial, then it goes to the phase 2 trials, where now a larger group is used for the efficacy, so the proof of concept. So I say this vaccine can protect against this. So we get a larger group, usually of volunteers as well, healthy volunteers, and then see if it really will protect them. And then the phase 3 trials will be a large group of people. It's usually the longest and the most expensive, and this goes on for a long time while it's going through all kinds of regulatory approvals, or is seeking all kinds of regulatory approvals. And this phase accounts for the longest phase of vaccine launching, which is why sometimes it takes up to 10 years before a vaccine comes to the market. So even when phase 1 and phase 2 are done, phase 3 takes a long time. And usually this has nothing to do with science, but more to do with money, politics, and and economics. That's the truth, okay? And then finally, the phase 4, which is the pharmacovigilance. So after the vaccines have been launched into the market, then we keep our eyes open to see what kind of side effects or what more we can learn about the vaccine after that. Like I said, it takes a long time and it costs a lot of money to get most vaccines into the market. So we all know that COVID-19 was first diagnosed in December of 2019. By December of 2020, we had more than 200 vaccines at various stages of the trials or in the pipeline. And then, so many of them will have been at the preclinical phase. But by then, we also had about 52 in human trials. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was approved for emergency use sometime this year. Sorry, what's the right word now? The approach, the design is that of a viral vector. It is usually given as an intramuscular injection, usually into the left deltoid, 0.5 mils. It has been found to be 63% effective in preventing COVID infections. It is given 2 doses, 12 weeks apart. And more than 10 million first doses have been given in the UK as we speak. And of course, in other parts of the world, in Europe and other parts of the world. Currently, it is not approved for pregnant women. It is also not approved for people who are less than 18 years of age because they were not included in the initial trials. That's the only reason why it's not been approved. Not because it is known to harm them, but because they were not included in the initial trial. Talking about vaccines, we must talk about safe versus harmless. Safe does not mean absolutely no adverse effects. Otherwise, no drug is safe. No drug is safe. If we thought safe meant no adverse effects. Every effective medicine, just because of the way it works, will have some untoward effects. But safe, when we're talking about vaccines, about medication, about medicine, safe is a balance of unwanted side effects compared with the benefits. And when the benefits clearly are in favor, when the balance is clearly in favor of the benefits, then you will consider that vaccine safe. Let me say that again. It's a balance of unwanted compared with the wanted effects. And when the wanted effects clearly outweigh the unwanted effects, then we say it's a safe vaccine. There will always be risks in medicine, and the fact that there's a risk does not mean that it is risky. There are many drugs. I'm sure many of us don't know that aspirin can lead to a hole in your stomach and bleeding to death. But many people take aspirin. The same thing with ibuprofen. Paracetamol can lead to damage of our liver, but we all take paracetamol regularly. People can react to penicillin, sudden anaphylactic death. I lost a first cousin that way. Just the penicillin injection, she dropped. But we take this all the time. Ampicillin is the penicillin. Amoxicillin is the penicillin. So what are the adverse effects of the COVID-19 vaccine? And I'm talking specifically today about the AstraZeneca. I will leave Dr. Getty to talk about other vaccines. And I'm talking about the AstraZeneca for many reasons. That's the one that has been deployed in Nigeria. The AstraZeneca is what has been deployed in Nigeria. So the possible adverse effects are fever, fatigue, headaches, muscle pain, chills, pain at the injection site. And why do we vaccinate? We want to get herd immunity. So herd immunity will confer the population with protection when a sufficient number of people become immune, either through catching the infection or through vaccination. So catching the infection gives you immunity. We don't know how long it will last. Getting vaccinated also gives you immunity. So if you look at this picture, this man is the orange man is the man with the infection, or the orange person is the person with the infection. The blue people are the people who have not caught the infection and have not been vaccinated. They are susceptible, they have no immunity. The purple people have immunity, either through vaccination or through catching the infection. If you have enough purple people surrounding the blue people, they will protect them from the orange people. And eventually the illness will die down and it will just become normalized like the common flu. Okay. Usually you will need between 50 to 90%, depending on what the illness is and how transmissible it is and so on and so forth. You need between 50 to 90% of the population to have immunity for you to say that the community has developed herd immunity. So what are some of the facts? That COVID is still largely a mild infection with an infection fatality rate of less than 1%. In other words, if 100 people catch COVID, less than one person will die of the infection. If you notice, I mentioned that we have seen over 2,500 patients. We've lost 27. That's in consonance with what is known about COVID. So the vast majority of the 2,500 people we saw just had mild infections that I actually believe will have improved even if they didn't go into hospital. A vast majority. We admitted about 200, 197 or so we've admitted. Those are the ones who are really ill. And it was that 197 that 27 died. The rates, but this very low infection fatality rate can go as high as 21% in some groups. In other words, 21 out of 100 people in certain groups will die. And it is because of those groups that we worry about COVID. So if you notice, all the people who died will fall in those groups. So it will be the older people, people who are 60 and above. It will be people who are overweight or obese. It will be people who have underlying illnesses, especially diabetes. It will be people who, unfortunately, it will be commoner in men. It is commoner in men. So, and it's because of wanting to protect that group of people who will be me, who will be parents to some of you in this group, or grandparents to some people who might be listening to us, who your bosses, your neighbors. It is to protect those group of people that have a high fatality rate that we talk about developing herd immunity. Let us not deceive ourselves. COVID is 10 times more fatal than the flu. It is not like the flu. Less than 0.01% of people die of the flu annually. Remember, that is, I'm talking about the entire population. For COVID, it's still about 0.65 or something like that will die of COVID. No vaccine existing on earth offers you 100% protection. The BCG we have always received to protect against tuberculosis only gives you 70% protection against tuberculosis. And yet BCG has been one of the most important discoveries of the last century because it reduced the incidence of tuberculosis. But people still have tuberculosis, even people who have had BCG. But what we do know is that people who get tuberculosis after they've had BCG vaccines usually will not get severe forms of tuberculosis. So they will not get disseminated tuberculosis of the brain, of the spine, and so on. Okay. There's no effective drug that is without adverse effects. So I put this list here. I don't know if you can see it. This long list of possible side effects. This is paracetamol. This is acetaminophen. Paracetamol has this long list. If we were to look at every medication we take, you'll be amazed at what you'll find as potential side effects. It is also a fact that some Scandinavian countries, Denmark and Norway in particular, suspended the use of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine sometime this month, earlier this month or late last month, because they observed that a couple of people developed clots and some of them died after the vaccine. I must mention that the illness itself, one of the characteristics of the illness is it causes what we call a coagulopathy. People tend to start forming clots. So some people develop clots after the vaccine. So they've suspended it, they haven't banned it, trying to find out because some have said people before COVID and people developed clots, so pulmonary embolism, DVT and things have always been with us. But COVID also increases the risk of getting those things. So we want to find out, did these people who died because of the vaccine or because they will have had a PE anyway, or the PE or the DVT. So there's some other facts. practicing face covering and physical distancing will protect you from COVID. And we will still need to continue those precautionary measures even after we've been vaccinated until we have achieved herd immunity. So getting the vaccine today doesn't mean tomorrow you can go to a nightclub or we should stop wearing masks to church, because the truth is until we have achieved herd immunity, and we will know when we achieve herd immunity, we will still need to take precautionary measures. But taking the vaccine is a step towards achieving herd immunity. Any vaccine that gives up to 50% protection when widely used will eventually confer herd immunity, because as the vaccine is going on, it will also, infections will be going on, and slowly the herd immunity will build. For COVID, we need between 50 to 67% of our population to become immune, because COVID is known to have an R rate of, or a reproduction rate of 2 to 3. In other words, each COVID infected person will infect 2 or 3 people. Okay. Inevitably, vaccinations vaccine passports will become inevitable for us to return to our normal lives. We know about new variants springing up from all over the world. And we do know, and that's another good reason why we need to take vaccines, because it will protect us from at least severe forms of the new variants. And so a time will come when the only way you can travel will be if you've taken a COVID vaccine, for those who want to travel, and you will show something that looks like this. The work for the viral vector started years ago, not something that just started, so it wasn't developed in 1 year, the vaccine. I already said this. It is also a fact that not enough is known yet about vaccines, and particularly about this vaccine. So we don't know what side effects, other adverse effects it may give us in the long term. We don't know that. That's a fact. Just like we don't know so much about the illness itself. What are the fears? So the fear of a severe immediate adverse reaction exists for every medication, like I've said so. The long-term adverse effects, which we cannot know, the vaccines have only been given in the last 3 to 4 months. So we can't know what the long-term effects will be. Nobody can know that. There are also concerns around safety because they think the vaccines were fast-tracked. They were fast-tracked, but I also told you that a big chunk of that fast-tracking came from removing the bottlenecks you normally will have in the phase 3 of the trial, because the world was in crisis. So people who ordinarily will have put those bottlenecks did not, and money was deployed. Because financial constraints is often a reason for the prolonged phase 3 trials for vaccines. There are also concerns around the cold chain and potency of vaccines. And then some talk about fake vaccines as well, which is why I'm limiting my discussion to the AstraZeneca vaccine, which I think for now, of all the vaccines I've read about, seems the most appropriate for our environment, given the kind of conditions you will need to store the other vaccines like the Pfizer and the other Moderna and so on. You require cold chain of minus 80 degrees, very difficult to sustain in the environment. The AstraZeneca virus vaccine is a sturdy vaccine that needs just the same kind of cold chain that we've used for EPI vaccines over the years. There are also concerns about the fact that after you've taken the first dose, I will say that when you're due for your second dose to be available, it's a valid concern, but I will say at the end, I will say something. Also, there's the concern that people after taking the first dose may not come back for their second dose, and yet we know we need 2 doses to get the highest level of immunity we require. People are worried about what will the vaccines cost? Will it be very expensive, particularly when we think of the cost of treating COVID? Then people are concerned about inequities in administration. They'll probably give it to all the big men in Abuja, and then there'll be none left for the rest of us. Then, of course, we have all kinds of conspiracy theories about the Antichrist. That's the Antichrist. People are trying to sterilize us. Maybe it's the beginning of the end. Genetic engineering. Those are all fears. But the truth is, nothing in recent memory captures in my mind the truism of John Donne's quote when in his famous devotions upon emergent occasions. This is an emergent occasion, and he says, "No man is an island." No man is an island. So yesterday, I received my own first dose of the vaccine. That's me receiving my dose. I received it at the mainland infectious disease hospital in Yaba. And so Lagos State is strategically rolling out the vaccine. And I believe if they adhere to their plans, and if we don't put pressure on them to deviate from their strategic plan, we will have equitable distribution. So the reason why I could receive the vaccine yesterday is because I'm a frontline worker. So the first batch of about 700 vaccines sent to Lagos, out of the 4 million that came into Nigeria, about 700,000 were sent to Lagos. They're going, first of all, they will target the frontline workers, irrespective of the ages or the gender of the frontline worker, as long as you're a frontline worker. And who are the frontline workers? The healthcare workers, the police, the rapid response squad. Those are some of the ones I remember. People who are in the front line of everything. People we need to preserve to ensure that they continue to provide that service to protect the rest of us. Okay. And then after all those people have taken up the vaccines, then the next stage will be to people who are 50 and above. Remember, they're the ones who are vulnerable, they're the ones who need protection. And then after 50 and above, and those who have certain conditions that predispose them to more severe illness, even if they're younger than 50. And then finally, to be for anybody who wants. There will be people who need the vaccines, and there are people who want the vaccines. So everyone who, for example, travels will require the vaccine, so they want the vaccine. They don't really need it. So when I got there yesterday, they gave me the card. And then there was an event and all that, and then we took the vaccine a couple of hours later because it was the launching of the vaccine. And I could have walked away with the card if that's what I needed, if all I needed was a card to show I can travel, and if I'm a dishonest person, that I'm not. And I will have pretended I'd taken the vaccine, although there's a nice catch. After we've taken the vaccine, they still need to write something on the card. But even if that didn't exist, I stayed mostly because the reason I went there for the vaccine was because I need it. I need to be protected. I felt particularly vulnerable because on Thursday, I had to set the line for a 14-day-old baby who had COVID. I'm the pediatrician. There are hardly any young pediatricians left in Nigeria. We all know our dear sister who left from the Elevation Church to the UK. The UK has opened the door for pediatricians. So all young pediatricians are seeking greener pastures. So it's left with the older ones. I don't remember the last time I set a line for a newborn, but I had to do it. My hands are not as steady as they should be. I spent 3 hours trying to set that line. In the end, it was finally set, not by me. So I felt very exposed. I knew the child had COVID, so I had my mask and everything on, but I felt very exposed, and I felt I haven't escaped COVID in 1 year, only to catch it just when the vaccines are arriving, which is how I found my way to mainland hospital on Friday. So I need the vaccine. But does my 35-year-old daughter absolutely need the vaccine? No. So she will want it because she wants to travel, and she might require the vaccination passport. So we will need to protect those who need it first. Then we will now go down to those who want it. And that will determine equity. Like I said, we must try to avoid putting pressure on the government to deviate from its set objectives of the strategic, well thought out rollout. And this picture here is a photograph of my own vaccine passport. So my second dose is due in June. And if God spares my life, I will be there in June to take my second dose. Thank you. I suspect I've spoken for more than 15 minutes. Forgive me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Onya. It was really insightful. Thank you so much. Okay, so I know that some of you might have questions. So please, could you just drop your questions in the chat room? That's what we're doing. So you drop your questions in the chat room. Some of us and the panelists will definitely see your questions, and we're taking note of those questions. And afterwards, after the two guest speakers have spoken, we'll ask your questions during the panel discussions or immediately after the panel discussions. So Dr. Onya, thank you so much. We have a couple of questions that we would ask you during the panel discussion, because we have questions that we have drafted from Nigerian citizens who are concerned, and some of the questions I'm sure you'll be able to answer during your session, during the panel discussions. So I'm so sorry I missed the keynote address, and so we'll have it now, just before Dr. Getty gets on board. It's going to be given by our own GM, our leader, Mr. Leonard Thomas. Mr. Leonard Thomas is a global thought leader and a strategist with over 17 years experience of exceptional track record and cross-functional experience in leadership development, business strategy, and execution. Human resource manager, he is an organizational development manager, and is a trainer and a social entrepreneur. He's a pioneer general manager of the recently established PISTIS Foundation, a non-profit arm of the Elevation Church, and also sits on the advisory board of a number of companies as a seasoned consultant, as well as the faculty of other companies, including non-for-profits. He's happily married and is blessed with children. Let us introduce Mr. Leonard as he gives the keynote address, please.
Thank you, Chineye. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can.
All right. I want to once again welcome everyone to today's webinar. It's the second in the series of the health webinar by the PISTIS Empowerment Foundation, which was founded by Pastor Godman Akinlabi. He happens to be the chairman of the board of trustees and the global lead pastor of our own very dear Elevation Church. Without further ado, I want to specifically appreciate Dr. Onya Ngozi for the first session that she has had with us. She's very, very dear to us, and she's been in our prayers because I'm very familiar with some of the challenges that she has been dealing with, being a frontline person at the COVID-19 fight. Okay, we want to appreciate you. She's also on an advisory board member of the PISTIS Foundation under the health key focus area, like she rightly mentioned at the start of her session. We also have Dr. Getty Chimeka Anyowoke, a fantastic name in our midst, all the way from Louisiana, United States of America. I won't speak about her. I'm sure one of our moderators will introduce her during when it's time for her to speak. I just want to appreciate everyone for joining in and pretty much say that when it comes to the COVID-19 battle and the vaccination, distribution across the globe and in Nigeria, a lot of concerns have come up. Earlier this week, we conducted a poll. Some of us, even who are present here, may have, been involved in the poll that was conducted online. We conducted the poll on Twitter. We conducted the poll on Instagram, and the results were amazing. Now, why did I say they were amazing? First of all, we observed that over 70% of persons indicated interest in wanting to, take the vaccine. And when I say persons, I'm referring to Nigerians mainly, all right? Over 70%. Would you like to take the COVID-19 vaccine? We had 71% yes. We had 29% saying no. And, we had a similar outcome when we conducted the poll on Twitter. However, why did I say it was amazing? Yeah, so how do you feel about the vaccination plan? 72% said they were worried and 28% said they were good. I'm wondering whether the 28% who said they were good are Nigerians, because when you look back at what happened last year, and this is for our speakers as well, when you look back at what happened last year, even when it came to the distribution of COVID-19 palliatives, majority of Nigerians were shocked, and a lot of people have lost hope in the system. And it's one of the main reasons why we have set up this forum, to be able to, enlighten people to be able to enlighten people better on the challenges that we're likely to face, or, the solutions that, especially for those of you who are in the front line. By that, I'm referring to Dr. Ngozi and Dr. Gertie. Dr. Gertie is the chairperson of the Nigerian Association of Physicians in her state in the US. And, it will be very helpful for them, very, very useful for us to be enlightened, not just on COVID-19 issues, but also on the vaccine, just like, Dr. Onya has helped to put some, issues straight for us to better understand. Maybe on the last note, I will also want to mention that we were meant to have Dr. Nnadi John as one of our key speakers today. I'm sure a few of us have possibly seen his picture and his poster as one of our speakers. However, he's unable to join us today because just earlier this week, he lost his brother, I was going to say family member, but he lost his brother to COVID-19. And this, of course, was very heart-wrenching. Unfortunately, he had to fly in all the way from the US on that sad note earlier this week. The burial happened today here in Lagos, and he's here with us in the spirit, and he has asked Dr. Gertie to also speak on his stead. And I'm sure Dr. Gertie will do a fantastic job as well. But, it's just appropriate that we communicate this to our invitees and our attendees, and I, of course, extend our deepest condolence to him and his entire family for the loss. So for those of us who actually think that, we're totally done with fighting, COVID, the truth is that certain persons are still passing away as a result of COVID. And I'm sure Dr. Onya can bear witness to what I'm sharing. So it's important for us to be mindful of these facts and also, try as much as we can to live healthily and live wisely. On that note, I will hand over to, our moderators who have, we have two of them present, Chinenye Rajafa and Stanley Kumulu Johnson. Thank you, everyone. I want to appreciate everyone once again for showing up, and please take notes as you enjoy today's session. Chinenye, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, GM. Thank you so much, Leonard. So the next guest speaker we have, our GM has introduced her briefly, but I'll do the honors of introducing her properly. Her name is Dr. Gertie Chimeka Anyanwuke. She's thorough and she's a compassionate internist and infectious disease specialist located in Los Angeles. She earned her medical degree from the College of Medicine, University of Lagos, completed her residency at New York Medical College, and subsequently finished a fellowship in infectious disease at North Shore, Long Island Jewish Health Systems. That's NYU medical program. She's board certified in infectious disease. Dr. Chimeka Anyanwuke has multiple community awards, as well as being a member of the AMA, ACP, and IDSA. She's a medical director of Infectious Disease Association of Baton Rouge, as well as Baton Rouge Multi-Specialty Care Center, Los Angeles, amongst others. Dr. Gertie is the chairman of ANPA Louisiana chapter, as well as the chairman of ANPA National Infectious Disease Committee. She's very involved in her Nigeria community, and she's currently the president of the United Nigeria Women Associations, amongst other responsibilities. Back in home, that's back here in Nigeria, she also has two chieftaincy titles from her community. You're welcome, Dr. Gertie. Welcome you to the floor, please. You have 15 minutes to give an opening session before the panel discussion.
Thank you, Chine. Thank you very much. I'm going to launch in and share my screen. So Dr. Ngozi Onya did an excellent job presenting a lot of the aspects of COVID. I am going to try to go through this and the areas that she really talked about, I might skip through so that I can get in as much information as possible, because I think that we need the information back home and even here in America. So I'm going to give a little bit talk about the virus itself. So this is an anatomy of the virus, just a picture schematic. So we call it coronavirus. The corona just means the shape here that's round. You see how this virus is round? So this is like you open it up to see what's inside. Here is the RNA enclosed in protein. This is the spike protein we keep hearing about. You guys are seeing my screen, right? This is the spike protein we keep hearing about. And here is the lipid membrane. So we found out that there are several features on the COVID virus that we could use in either making vaccines or making drugs to break it down and stop it from entering cells. And so this here, this spike protein has been used by, I think, almost all the vaccine platforms that are currently in place, because this is how the virus gets into the cell. This virus contains about 20-something protein, but the spike protein is the one that's actually being used. A little bit about the life cycle. So you see, I just described this virus in the previous picture, and this is the spike protein around it. This is the RNA virus. In our body, on the surface of our cells, we have the ACE2 receptors, which are the angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptors. That's how the virus maneuvers its way into our cells. It uses this ACE2 receptor to get into our cells. When it gets into our cells, it uses our cell different proteins and other enzymes to, there's a membrane fusion and RNA is released, and then it replicates itself. You see how it's doing this replication and packaging. And when it does this, the over here is another assembly and budding. When it does that and packages it around the virus, it releases it, and the process continues. So there are common vaccine questions in our communities. I'm going to try and address some of them. Dr. Ngozi addressed a lot of them. This is me. This was early January. I was getting my second dose of the Pfizer vaccine. I took my first dose of the Pfizer vaccine in December of 2020. Again, that's because I am a frontline worker. So recent CDC data on minorities and COVID-19, it just shows that minorities, Black people, Hispanics, Native Americans are more affected by this virus than white Americans. 4 times more hospitalization, nearly 3 times likely to die from COVID than white people. But the white Americans have been getting vaccinated more than 3 times the rate that Black Americans are. And this disparity, a lot is from certain factors. There was a recent Family Foundation poll, that's the poll that showed that 35% of Black Americans do not plan to get the vaccine. And their major concerns were the safety and newness of the vaccine. So I'm going to try and address those issues today. Why is there so much vaccine hesitancy in the minority communities, including in Africa, in Nigeria? We know, at least over here in America, there has been racism in medicine, racism in healthcare, and racism in government policies. In the past, Black people have felt violated in the arena of medicine and science. We have heard about the Tuskegee syphilis experiment that was done in America in 1932, where Black men were intentionally denied treatment, leading to morbidity and mortality. And this is when, even when we had penicillin was discovered to treat syphilis, they were not given. They were used to find out how syphilis progresses in a human body. Another example is the Henrietta Lacks case, where her cancer cells were used for research. She did not know about it. They did not financially compensate her. Even today in the United States of America, Black people still face inequalities in healthcare. So all this leads to people being skeptical, people being distrustful of the system, and they hesitate to take the vaccine as a result. I want to talk a little bit about vaccines. Dr. Onya mentioned how long vaccines have been and all that. I would say that the story about the Black slave who told his master in 1721 that in his village in West Africa, when people got smallpox, they took a little bit juice from the smallpox of somebody that was infected and put it on somebody that wasn't infected, and that protected people in his village. That was the first idea in 1721. And his master utilized that idea. Eventually, vaccination became a worldwide thing. Now, everybody was talking about the messenger RNA vaccine, being the new platform and all that. That's true. That's the first time it was deployed as a platform for vaccine. But however, the work on messenger RNA has been 3 decades in the making. It was not overnight. It's been something that scientists have been working on since the 1990s. This doctor, Dr. Katalin Kariko, she's actually from Eastern Europe. She started working on this platform for about 3 decades now. Her project was the idea that they could utilize messenger RNA technology to combat disease, since a lot of diseases are as a result of some protein gone bad. They met a lot of disappointments on the way, but she didn't give up. In the year 1990, they were able to use this in mice successfully in University of Wisconsin. However, they found some problems, like synthetic messenger RNA was unstable, and in this unstable state could lead to immune response with unintended risk to some patients. So 15 years later, in 2005, they figured out the solution to the problem and tried to use this technology for the Ebola vaccine a couple of years ago. However, in the year 2020, all this preparation of 30 years met with the opportunity during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, minorities also worked on this vaccine. This is Dr. Kizzy Colbert. She's a Black American scientist who worked with other teams of scientists in the NIH that they worked on the Moderna vaccine. I do want to also say that there are Africans, there are Nigerians that also worked on the different vaccine platform, Pfizer, Moderna. So members of our committee, the AMPA is Association of Nigerian Physicians in the Americas. And so we have a National Infectious Disease Committee, which I'm the chair of. Members of that committee are in the NIH, where they make all the decision on all the therapeutics. Professor Igor Ofotokun is our representative. Dr. Obi Nedu, he also worked on vaccine platform. Even Dr. John Nadi, that was supposed to present here, is an investigator. So we have a bunch of Nigerians that have been working on this vaccine. Vaccines work, like Dr. Ngozi presented. This here is a schematic. This is a annual number of cases in Ireland, 1950 and 2019. The difference here is that vaccines were introduced for all these diseases. You see how big the bubble was in 1950? That's the number of cases, and how small the bubble was in 2019. That's how small the cases have become as a result of vaccines. So how do vaccines work? You're given a small amount of a harmless form of a disease or something that looks like the disease, then your body makes antibodies to fight it off. Then if you encounter the disease again, your immune system is ready to take it out. How do the vaccines work? The messenger RNA or spike protein of coronavirus gets injected here, right? And it gets into our muscles, in the cells. It gets to the cell cytoplasm. Over at the cell cytoplasm, it uses our own cell ribosomes and enzymes to teach our cells how to make the spike protein. This spike protein, remember that I showed you on the coronavirus itself. That spike protein, after it's made, the messenger RNA self-destructs because it's denatured, is no longer is used, and so it's waste, and it gets out through the waste system of the body. But that spike protein induces the immune system and starts reacting to produce antibodies and also T cells, both T helper cells and T killer cells, that now come in and get ready to fight whenever we see this disease. Messenger RNA is the starting point of translation. So we've heard of DNA, that's double-stranded, is translated into a messenger RNA, mainly giving that messenger RNA an instruction to go and produce protein. That's all. And so that messenger RNA, after it produces that protein, is destroyed. Now, so the messenger RNA comes here, is translated into amino acids. And you see each codon of the amino acids, each codon of this protein that it's produced, it goes into one amino acid. So you have GUA, will produce valine. You have UGC, who produce cysteine, going on like that. And these all form a polypeptide chain that collapse together and form into proteins. Again, this is messenger RNA in a cell right here. And this is a messenger RNA. Here's the 5' region, here's the 3' region, and here's the tail. In the middle right here, where is the blue, is where they encode that genetic message in this messenger RNA. Once it gets into the cell and utilizes this, it self-destroys. So was the process rushed? I would say yes. It was an accelerated process because of the effects of COVID-19 pandemic in the whole world. World economies were shut down, and the United States of America government and also United Kingdom and European Union, they all formed very accelerated vaccine processes. In America, we call it the Operation Warp Speed. So I'm going to describe a little bit about how normally it takes, how long it takes to make a vaccine. It can take anywhere up to 10 years or more, but because it's a process. So before you make a vaccine, you start with research and development, right? You do preclinicals. And then after you do all that and this vaccine is making sense in the laboratory, you do animal studies. After you do animal studies and you see that it works, you go into phase 1 clinical trials for humans. That phase 1 clinical trial, what it does is it gives you, it says, okay, this vaccine is safe. It will not kill the person you give it to. Then the next thing is phase 2 trial. That phase 2 trial says that, okay, this vaccine is immunogenic, meaning it produces antibodies against this virus and all the organism. And then you move to phase 3 trial. What you're doing there is to now say, okay, I'm going to get thousands of people. And then I'm going to check this vaccine out if it works. Do that. Once it proves good again, you move into actually manufacturing it and distributing it while continuing a phase 4 trial to see what happens to these people that performed clinically in phase 3, and see how they go long term. Now, this is that's a typical process I just described. The accelerated process followed the same thing as the typical process. Dr. Ngozi Onya did explain to you all at the beginning that the reason that it was so accelerated, part of it was because a lot of the bottlenecks, the bureaucracy was taken out of it because the whole world economy was crashing. It was affecting everybody. Nobody could go to work at one point. Schools were all closed down. People are working from home and all that stuff. Even the stock market was about to crash. Okay, so what happened is after the research and development, I've talked about the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine platform. They've been working on it for 30 years. And after they got that already as a platform, they were able to do a phase 1 human clinical trials to prove that this was safe. It wasn't going to kill any human being. And once they established that, they went into phase 2. Shortly after they went into phase 2, they also started phase 3, pari passu, and built up with that. If you watch this diagram right here, they started manufacturing the drug right at the beginning of the phase 2 trials, just because the US government said, listen, I got this amount of money, billions of dollars. Pharmaceutical companies, do not worry about losing your money. If it doesn't work, we, the American government, put this financial risk, we lose our money, you don't have to worry about it. But manufacture this drug, this vaccine, such that when we come to the other end and if it works, we don't have to go start manufacturing. We cut the process short by months and start vaccinating our people. So that's really what happened. And then right now, all the phase 3 trials that have come in from Moderna and Pfizer are still being followed for 2 years. I know that the first vaccines were given around March, April of 2020. So we're getting to be the 1-year track right now. I think for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials, I think they actually started giving those participants sometime in March, April of 2020. Usually, large studies will take maybe 2,000 participants. If you get a very extended large study, like 4,000 to 5,000 people. The process was accelerated, but no corners were cut. I want you to look at this. Pfizer had 37,000. This is unheard of numbers in clinical studies. Moderna had 30,000. AstraZeneca, 30,000. Janssen, that has been approved in America in the last 10 days, 60,000. Novavax is still in development. They will likely be approving that, I think, in the next few weeks. Sanofi is on hold for now. So were minorities included in the studies? Absolutely, yes. 10% of study participants were Black Americans, 26% were Hispanics, 8% were Asians. And 49% of participants were females, 51% were males. Some of those females later became pregnant while the study was going on, and nothing has happened to them. So right now, I have female colleagues that are pregnant that are taking the vaccines, and nothing is happening. So we are advising people that are frontline workers that are at high risk of getting COVID, who are pregnant, to go ahead and take the vaccine. Is the vaccine safe? Absolutely. The current COVID-19 vaccines went through rigorous processes to ensure safety. There are systems that are put in place here, the CDC, the FDA, and the independent commission that all oversees this. I also want you guys to put this in perspective. As at last night, March 12th, 2021, 3:09 p.m. my time, more than 345 million shots of this vaccine have been given worldwide. In the US alone, about 101 million doses have been administered. And so if it was unsafe, a lot of these people would have already had so much problems. Is the vaccine effective in all populations? Absolutely. The race and the ethnicity. In Black people, it was actually 100% effective. In white people, it was 95.2. In Hispanics, it was 94.4. By age, it was 100% effective in people greater than 75 years old, 94.7 in people greater than 65, and 3.7 in people greater than 55, 95.6% in participants 16 to 55-year-old. It was 96% effective in males, 94% effective in females. Overall vaccine efficacy was 94.6%. That was for the Moderna and Pfizer. For the efficacy of Johnson & Johnson, it was in the US, because now we have different variants. In the US, it was 72%. In Latin America, 66%. In South Africa, because of the South African variant, it was 57%. And that's because that particular variant of the virus is getting to kind of escape the antibodies, the neutralizing antibodies of the vaccine. But what they found out is after 28 days, it prevents people 85% of the time from having the severe disease. After 49 days, it prevents people 100% of the time from having severe disease. And there were no COVID-related deaths after taking this vaccine for more than 28 days. So that's actually very good news. So will a COVID-19 vaccine alter my DNA? No, absolutely not. I want you to look at this cell. This is a schematic of a cell. So this is the cell cytoplasm right here, right? This is the mitochondria. This is the nucleus. This here is the cell membrane. This is the ribosomes. What happens? The messenger RNA vaccines do not change or interact with our DNA in any way. The messenger RNA vaccines stay here in the cytoplasm. They use our ribosomes and other enzymes to teach our cells how to make spike protein using that messenger RNA. When they make that spike protein, it now stimulates the body to produce antibodies. And so, if you look at it, I just described the cytoplasm. This is the nucleus. The nucleus is where the DNA is. That messenger RNA never made it into the nucleus. So how can it even change our DNA? That was just, I don't know where that came from. Now, people talk about 666, mark of the beast. It doesn't have anything to do with COVID-19 vaccine. Like Dr. Ngozi Onya said, in the medical community, there has been prediction of another pandemic. And I can tell you right now, there will be another pandemic in future, okay? We just don't know which one is gonna be. And that is just as a result of science, as a result of biology, as a result of virology. That is a natural process. In 1918, we had a huge pandemic, the Spanish flu, that shut down the whole world economy. This is not new. And we do have vaccine passports. I have my yellow fever vaccine card. When I want to travel sometimes, I need it as a passport. So none of this stuff is new. Why is it not true that the COVID-19 vaccine contains a microchip? Now, the COVID-19 vaccine does not contain any microchip. Okay, it's a false narrative that's been propagated by some highly misinformed people. This misinformation may actually become harmful to the health of members of our communities if it prevents us from protecting ourselves and our families with the COVID-19 vaccine. So they talk about the nanotechnology being a way that the government is going to use it, put a chip in us. This is all hogwash. It's nonsense. I'm sorry. There is no microchips in the messenger RNA vaccines. So the hydrogel nanotechnology describes the technology that is used where you use the lipid nanoparticles in keeping the messenger RNA stable. Remember when I was presenting it, I was talking about the problems they found when they were doing these studies to see how they could use the messenger RNA platform. One of the problems was that the messenger RNA itself was unstable. So now they use these lipid nanoparticles to encapsulate the messenger RNA, prevent it from denaturing, prevent it from destroying until it gets to our cells. Then it can be used there to use the spike protein, then it gets destroyed. What does nano mean? Nano just means very tiny. So the lipid nanoparticles means very tiny fat molecules. That's it. And that's what is used in encapsulating the messenger RNA to allow it to remain stable. It is no microchip. Now, they talk about the government tracking us. The government is already tracking us. If they want to track us, they can track us. Every one of us that use cell phone, they have cell phone towers, they can track us already, okay? They don't need any vaccine. And it is not biologically possible to use a vaccine to track us. This all came from how the Pfizer was going. Pfizer, because they required such a low, ultra low temperatures, they designed a packaging form for their distribution and transportation. So you look at this package here, you have like 195 bottles of the vaccine in this. They have 5 of these put together in this box. And then they have this dry ice right here. They put the box in this dry ice to keep that ultra low temperature of minus 70 degrees. Okay. And then they put a temperature, a thermometer here. This thermometer is USB device that is also can track this package. This thermometer is right here in the dry ice. It doesn't track the liquid in the vaccine itself, which is what gets into our arms. It tracks this package to know, number one, keep it in that low temperature, and number two, where is that package at any time so that they can know. So COVID-19 and blood clots. What about the COVID-19 vaccine? See, this is a conversation I added this slide because of the issue that came up on Thursday. Denmark, I believe, and a few other countries, but I think a few other countries, especially in the Eastern Europe bloc, that decided to put a halt on administering the AstraZeneca vaccine for the next 2 weeks because I think it was about 3 people had blood clots in Denmark, and I think 1 person died. I want to say that 1 person that died is in Austria. And so the government decided, oh, wait a minute, let's figure this out, and then let's know. I want us to remember that people already have comorbidities, okay? And to think that the people that usually get these vaccines they usually start from the elderly, and then they go to like people that have comorbidities, like other medical problems. So you have to remember that these people already have comorbid conditions, that regardless of whether the vaccine or not, they may have developed blood clots. It's not like anybody checked them before the vaccine to know if they had blood clots. I want to talk a little bit about blood clots in COVID-19 infection itself. When we get infected in COVID, studies have shown that we have higher risk of blood clots in the liver, in the lungs, in the kidney, even in pregnancy. We have blood clots in the heart and the brain. That is COVID-19 itself. I don't know if you guys have heard of COVID-19 toe. That's a result of blood clot in the toe. And then there's skin rashes as a result of blood clots. That is COVID-19 infection itself. So there is a higher risk of getting blood clots if we get infected by COVID-19. So I just talked about Denmark, Norway, and Ireland who suspended, I think that was 2 days ago on Thursday, March 11, 2021, they suspended the use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine because of this issue. They wanted to investigate and find out if this is true or not. But even the WHO and the European regulators have already said that nothing of this. I do want people to remember that the percentage of blood clots that occurs in the regular population without vaccine is actually higher than those that they happened while they took the vaccine. So you see, there is really no exact relationship or linkage. So what are the common side effects of COVID-19 vaccine? I think Dr. Onya mentioned a lot of this: soreness in the arm, pain and swelling, and some people will have chills, tiredness, headache, stuff like that. You could take acetaminophen or ibuprofen. Acetaminophen is paracetamol in Nigeria, is Tylenol here in the United States. You wear to reduce pain and discomfort after you get the shot. You can apply a clean, cool, wet washcloth over the area. You can use or exercise your arm to reduce discomfort from fever. You can drink plenty of fluids, dress lightly. There are serious side effects to the messenger RNA vaccine and even the AstraZeneca, like Dr. Onya mentioned. I would say yes, because they have had serious problems from vaccination that have happened, but these are rare. Most of those serious problems are severe allergic reactions known as anaphylaxis. Like if somebody that is have a severe allergic reaction to penicillin would also have that similar reaction. So this is not peculiar to the vaccine. Again, this is rare. And those people that have severe allergic reaction, all you have to give is give them a shot of EpiPen and the reaction resolves. I know that people, I'm not going to go into talking about the different variants and all that. And I know that people have seen videos on the internet of a nurse in Tennessee that fainted after she got the vaccine, like 17 minutes into it. And that's all the clip they showed, right? Nobody showed that nurse, shortly after that, a few minutes later, she woke up and she told the news people, she's like, she has fainting illness. 6 weeks before she took the vaccine, she had fainted like 6 times before the vaccine. So anytime she has any like excitement or something going on, she passes out. That is her illness. But they don't put that in that clip. They just keep circulating that, oh, she's a nurse, she took the vaccine and she fainted. But they don't give you the behind story. There's another one that is circulating about Bell's palsy. There is really no relationship. There has not been any established linkage about Bell's palsy and the vaccine. In the normal regular population, and Dr. Onya is here, she will bear me witness, people get Bell's palsy idiopathically. My father had Bell's palsy when I was in medical school, and this was in the 90s, early 90s. So he did not take the COVID vaccine at that time, and you can ask a lot of people that you know. Bell's palsy happens. It happens in the normal population. So if somebody was going to get Bell's palsy, that you took the vaccination and it happens, it's like, okay, I was coming back from getting the vaccine. If God forbid, if I got into an accident, is it the vaccine that caused the accident? No. So that's what I just want people to put it into perspective. I try to stay within the time limit. I just think I need to talk about this. Is it safe for me to get a COVID-19 vaccine if I would like to have a baby one day? Yes. People who want to get pregnant in the future may receive the COVID-19 vaccine. There is currently no evidence that antibodies formed from COVID-19 vaccine cause any problems with pregnancy, including the development of the placenta. In addition, there is no evidence suggesting that fertility problems are a side effect of any vaccine at all. People who are trying to become pregnant now or who plan to try in the future may receive the COVID-19 vaccine when it becomes available to them. I want to also say that I told you all 49% of the people that participated in the study for COVID-19 vaccine were females. Out of those females, some of them got pregnant during that time. It wasn't like they were planning to or they knew. But this was like 1 year ago. They followed them through, nothing happened. And they are going to follow them through to 2 years. That's just for extra precaution. Usually when you are doing the vaccines, most side effects happen within few days, at most 2 weeks. They usually follow them for normal other vaccines within like 6 weeks. The CDC decided they were going to do 2 months instead of 6 weeks. And even that 2 months, that's where we got all the data. Most vaccines, nothing happens after the initial period. So if it hasn't happened with other vaccines, and we've been taking vaccines for more than 100 years, why should it happen with this one? It's just for us to think about it. I want to stop here because I still have a lot of slides, but I know that we have to get into the question and answer. I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Getty. Thank you so very much. In fact, you handle some of the questions that we might be asking you in the future, so it was actually, we're enjoying the session. It was very insightful. Thank you so much, ma. God bless you. So let me just go straight into the panel discussions, some of which have been answered during your session. So I'll skip the questions that have been answered, and then I'll just ask you some of the questions that still have a gray area that people might want to, more clarity on. So the first question is to Dr. Onya. Dr. Ngozi, can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can.
Okay, Dr. Onya, I know you spoke a lot about the symptoms of the COVID-19 vaccine shots afterwards. So some people are asking, what are the most common symptoms of COVID-19 itself in Nigeria, based on your experience and based on the people you have seen and you've intervened at PMH? What are the most common symptoms of COVID-19 in Nigeria? How easily, second question, part of it, how easily and easily accessible is it to get tested for COVID-19 in Nigeria, maybe in Lagos precisely? And if I suspect that I have COVID-19, what should I do?
Thank you very much for the questions. And Dr. Getty, thank you. That was absolutely brilliant and insightful. I've learned so much. I clearly knew I wasn't the right person for this webinar, but you are clearly the right person to talk about vaccines because of your own area of specialty. So thank you. I've learned so much myself. Thank you. The commonest symptoms, I think, of COVID-19 in Nigeria will be a fever for those who will present, because we know that 40% will have no symptoms. But of the 40% who will not, so 40 out of 100 people with COVID will have no symptoms. 40 will have mild symptoms, and those mild symptoms usually will be a fever, headache, fatigue, just feeling tired, and a cough. Some will have diarrhea as well. So, but if I have to say, the major ones will be the fever, the cough, the fatigue, headache. Then the next question was, how easy is it to get a COVID test? Very easy, very, very easy. A lot of facilities. The rapid antigen test, irrespective of what we say, is fairly useful in the diagnosis of COVID, of symptomatic COVID. I'm yet to see anybody with symptomatic COVID, that is in the viral phase, in the first week of the illness, who test negative to the rapid test. So if you get the rapid test, if the sample is properly collected, because the reasons why you can test negative when you have COVID, I think probably the biggest one is that sometimes the person taking the sample doesn't stick the swab deep enough into the nostrils, because sometimes the patients are pushing back or reacting, or maybe even also the person collecting the sample is scared of getting infected. So for all those reasons, but when a sample is well taken from the nasopharynx, if for patients who are symptomatic in the first week, the rapid antigen test is reliable. However, the gold standard is still the PCR. That is also available very widely. In Pelon, we can do all the three tests, including the antibodies. The antibodies are only useful for after the illness to see if you got infected. Okay, so there's the antibody test in the blood, there's the antigen test, which is the rapid test, and then there's the PCR, which is the molecular test, all readily available in various locations and sites in Lagos. And it's easy to find those sites. So that was the second question. And then the third thing is, I wish we had the chance to send it. I will send a video to Brother Leonard and see if he can play that video. I think that because although we're discussing vaccine, I think we should not move away from the illness. Like you rightly said, people are still dying of COVID. I lost my 27th patient on Monday. So yes, people are still dying of COVID. Yeah. And in fact, we just admitted the patient today. So it's not, so the wave is dying, is breaking, but people are still getting infected. COVID is still with us. And let us have no doubt. Again, no conspiracy theory. Dr. Onya is not saying this because she wants Pelon to continue to make money. There will be a third wave. It's the nature of pandemics. So there's usually a first wave, then a bigger second wave, and then a smaller third wave. And if we don't take up vaccines early enough in Nigeria, we could even go into a fourth wave. But the third wave, I think it's almost inevitable. It will come between Easter and the summer, when people start congregating again, people are traveling and so on. So that the things that drive these waves. So yes, what do you do if you get COVID? If you have symptoms, as early as possible, the first thing is don't be in denial. If we hear hoofbeats now, we're not going to be thinking zebras. We'll be thinking horses. The common horse now for fever is COVID. People will say they haven't had malaria in 30 years. So when you feel like you have malaria now, why will you want to think you have malaria when you know COVID is ravaging the planet? So the first thing is when you feel ill, fever, chills, like malaria, please go and get yourself tested for COVID wherever you like. The government still offers free treatment. I mean, free, apart from treatment, they offer free treatment, but free diagnosis, testing for COVID, free at many sites, particularly if you're symptomatic. If I just walk in there and say, please test me for COVID, they won't test me. But if you are ill and you go there and you ask for a test, free of charge, the government will test you. Yaba and many other places. And the first week, and Brother Leonard, like I said, I will send you that video. And if you are able to project that video, I think it says everything I want to say about the COVID infection. If not the vaccine, but the infection. It's a 4-minute video only.
That's okay.
All right.
Doctor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Onye. So the second question is actually to Dr. Getty. Dr. Getty, someone wants to know if, hold on please. I know that you talked about COVID-19 and how the vaccines, how it works. So someone is asking, can COVID-19 vaccines provide long-term protection? Are there evidence to support the claim for either long-term or short-term protection?
So thank you for the question. Very good question. What I have found that has worked for me and for my colleagues over here is to be able to level with the public, is to tell the truth. We don't know what we don't know. One of my colleagues in the Association of Nigerian Physicians of America, Infectious Disease Committee, described it as, we're building a plane while we are trying to fly the plane. So we are not sure of how long the vaccine efficacy will last in protecting us. Like I said during my presentation, the first people that got vaccinated is about 1 year now. They have not been revaccinated. The study is continuing for 2 years. They're following all of them. I'm sure if they start seeing that they're taking up with infection, they're going to inform the rest of us. We haven't seen that yet. So we only know what we know right now. And that those of us that have taken the vaccines seem to be doing okay. I took the vaccine, like I said, in December, my first shot and my second shot early January. And I've been working, although very carefully. I do a lot of more video calls now, video visits than I used to do in the past. But I still go into the facilities to see my patients. I haven't had COVID. And so goes for a lot of my colleagues over here. We're thankful that we were able to get it. We do not know how long it will last. We just have to keep following the studies and see. The time is the only thing that would tell us. Everybody is witness to this COVID. We are all witness to it. So we know only as much as we know right now. There have been some studies that were published by immunologists that suggest that protection will last somewhere at least like natural immune protection will last minimum of 6 to 8 months. But I'm not sure about that. Like I said, we have to still follow and see what happens in future. Thank you.
Sorry, may I just add to say that also from experience, my granddaughter got infected with COVID last year. My granddaughter in May and my daughter in June. I tested them both for antibodies still in February. My granddaughter was coming to spend the weekend and I wanted to be sure she wasn't going to pose any risk to me because she had just started school as well. She still had antibodies, strong antibodies from May last year to February this year. I haven't tested her again now. So like you said, we will know with time, you know. But if the infection itself is conferring longer immunity than we thought, because initially they said 3 to 6 months, but now I'm talking about 8 months and they still have immunity. So time will tell us about the vaccines as well, particularly when we now get a booster dose again on it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Onye and Dr. Getty. So the next question is for Dr. Onya. Dr. Onya, there's the next stage and for us to be concerned, we should just live with it. Should this mindset be a major concern?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you because for a while your voice was crackling.
Okay, can you hear me clearly now, Dr. Onya?
Now I can, yes.
Okay. So I said there's a mindset, a general mindset among citizens that COVID-19 is just another strain of malaria. It has come to stay. Should we be concerned about this mindset, or is it okay?
Well, first and foremost, malaria is a parasite. It's a protozoa. COVID is a virus, so it's not another strain of malaria. Maybe you could say like a flu, because it's a predominantly respiratory infection, like a flu. And will COVID ever finally disappear from the world? Unlikely. But when we have herd immunity, remember what I said about herd immunity, we will have, if we look at the whole thing, in the whole scheme of things, COVID didn't really kill that many people. So far, it's killed maybe 2-point-something million people out of 7 billion people. The problem was that it killed so many people in a short period of time. So the healthcare system got overwhelmed. So we will get to a stage where people will occasionally get COVID. Maybe 3 people will get COVID, and then some will fall very ill. And yes, COVID will stay with us, but we will normalize it after we have built herd immunity. So the point now is for us to build herd immunity to reduce the number of vulnerable people in the population. So what will probably happen going forward is that people who are vulnerable might need to have booster doses repeatedly going forward. But we are not likely to have another COVID pandemic after this one ends. I don't know if that answers the question. But that's, yeah. I like what Dr. Getty said, that I'm going to use that phrase because
Yes,
we only know what we know. Yeah, I like that. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Onya. Can you hear me clearly, please?
Yes, I can, very clearly.
Yes, please.
Okay, so the next question is for Dr. Getty. Please, I want to be sure you could hear me clearly. Can you hear me clearly, Dr. Getty?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. I think the question is actually addressed to Dr. Getty, but Dr. Onya would like to answer it. I think she answered it during her session. Is actually how soon would these vaccines be available in Nigeria, and how would we know if the COVID-19 vaccines are safe? I think most of your presentations have answered that question, so I think we can skip to the next question. Affordability. Dr. Onya, do you have an idea how affordable these vaccines would be in Nigeria, and what happens to the most vulnerable citizens who cannot afford it?
The good news, it's free. Free of charge. I didn't pay a penny to get vaccinated a few days ago. So eventually, it might come through the private sector and become a little more expensive for people who are not willing to go to public hospitals, or for people who are not considered to be in the need group, but the want group. Eventually, 6 months down the line, 1 year down the line. But for now, the vaccine is free of charge. The government is paying for it.
The next question, I think Dr. Onya is addressed to you. Dr. Onya, is how are COVID-19 patients managed in Nigeria? It has an extension too. Most of the public centers are not fully equipped to manage complicated cases, and the private centers are not easily affordable. That's the general opinion of most Nigerians. Is it true or is it false?
The cost of providing care for COVID, I wonder if Dr. Getty will be able to share with us what it costs in the US. The good thing is that in the US, insurance pays. In the UK, the National Health Service bears the cost. The cost of providing care for COVID, for serious COVID, is very expensive. But in other parts of the world where insurance works, then insurance bears the cost. That's what is just showing in Nigeria, that we don't have a proper payment system for healthcare. Out-of-pocket payment is totally unsustainable and can ruin anybody. can throw people into financial hardship for life, just one illness. Intensive care is a very expensive business. Okay, so let me say that first. The government, Lagos State government, I will only talk for Lagos State government because Lagos is where I practice, has just opened a very nice 40-bedded hospital in Bagada. The Bagada General Hospital has been converted to the life care, where they will provide healthcare at a good, much higher level. And I was at the mainland hospital, Yaba, for the first time in my life yesterday to go and get my vaccine. It's not a bad looking place. I didn't go into the water. I didn't need to. And the truth is that most people who have COVID will require oxygen. Oxygen is like the lifeblood of COVID. Oxygen is available. They now actually have oxygen generating plants in Yaba, in the COVID treatment center. Then a few people will require ventilation and intensive care. That's where we'll have a challenge. And that challenge is not just a challenge for the private sector, it's also been for the public sector. It's a private sector challenge. We don't have enough intensivists in Nigeria. It boils down to the same problem of the healthcare system. The same reason why a 61-year-old pediatrician was setting a line 2 or 3 days ago. It's the same problem, the brain drain, the brain theft. Why Dr. Getty speaking to us from Louisiana, not from Lagos or from Enugu? The same reason why we don't have enough specialists in Nigeria. And because we don't have enough specialists in Nigeria, they will prefer the private sector where we are willing to pay. If I tell you the sum of money I was paying, I paid the intensive care physician who works for us, you will not believe it, on a daily basis. The government won't pay that. So if they had the choice, of course, they will come to the private sector. They will not go to the government. So it's a problem of a broken healthcare system that was exposed. So how are they treated? I hope Brother Leonard will show that video. If everybody addresses the COVID issue early enough, the good thing is, and I think Dr. Getty will bear me out, nobody goes from being asymptomatic or mildly symptomatic to critically ill. Nobody. People who are asymptomatic stay asymptomatic. People who become critically ill usually have fairly serious illnesses, but then they will stay home, medicating themselves with vitamins, supplements, steaming, all kinds of things I've never heard of, and then say to you, don't worry, I'm monitoring my blood, my oxygen. And I say to them, if you're waiting till you start desaturating, your oxygen starts going low to come to hospital, you've come too late. And when people's oxygen saturation start going low, at that point, it's like a horse that has bolted from the stable. All the healthcare workers will be chasing a bolting horse. The horse is faster than human beings. If you're lucky, something trips the horse, it falls down, you catch it and you bring it back. Otherwise, that horse is gone, no matter anywhere in the world, which is why people are dying in hundreds of thousands, even in the US, one of the most advanced healthcare systems in the world. However, which is probably, I think, why we have a predominance of serious illness in the minority ethnic groups, because like where they came from, they tend to be the ones who will present late. The white people will go to hospital quickly. They're very quick to admit they have an illness. They will not do steaming and all the things we do at home. They'll just present in hospital, get it addressed earlier, but we would delay and go late to hospital. Of course, we tend to be more obese than the whites. Anyway, but that's on our side. So if people go in to access care early enough and monitor appropriately, most people will not need to progress to critical illness. The people who eventually become critically ill and die are people who have stayed at home, taking agbo, doing all kinds of things. And then when they are now, critically ill, or very seriously ill, they present in the hospital. And, COVID is like a Rubik's Cube. Remember the Rubik's Cube? As you are turning one side, one blue will pop up among the yellows, then another green. So you are treating the oxygen that's going down, you give a steroid, suddenly the blood sugar shoots up. Suddenly the white blood count shoots up. The person gets a big bacterial sepsis. The kidneys are shutting down because of the drug. So all kinds of things start to happen. And then you just keep doing the best you can. And all these things are very expensive. It would be nice to get one day, I will, not now, because I don't want to appear to be defensive, when we will present the true cost of providing COVID care, then people will understand why the price is high. So the price is not the issue. The issue is who's paying for it. I suspect it costs a lot more in the US than it costs in Nigeria because salaries are much higher there. But the people don't pay. The insurance pays, the government pays. I don't know if that answered the question.
Yes, you did, Dr. Ngozi. Thank you so much.
But I would like Dr. Getty to please weigh in on this discussion.
Yes, I wanted her to comment too.
Thank you. Okay.
Dr. Getty.
This is the issue of costs, how much it costs.
Yeah, how much is
the cost of care, yes.
Management, yeah, cost of care.
Like Dr. Ngozi said, a lot of people here have insurance, but you have to realize that 81% of the people that get COVID, at least over here, do not make it to the hospital. Most of them are treated as outpatients. A lot of my patients, I actually treated them at home. The people that had maybe from mild to moderate, depending, especially when the hospitals were all saturated and full and they didn't have beds, are treated more like moderate patients at home. The people that end up in the hospital are about 19% of the population, and about 5% of that might end up in the intensive care. The cost, of course, is exorbitant depending on the other comorbidities. And if the patient ended up in the ICU, it would be astronomical. However, during this COVID period, even if you didn't have insurance or you have insurance and they are talking about your deductible or your copay, in America, COVID or not, you get into an emergency room, nobody's going to talk about the cost. They have to treat you first. That is a law. They can pass that here because it's a more organized society. If you expect people in Nigeria, a private hospital that is paying their own bills, government is not giving them money, and then somebody comes into the emergency room and then you expect them to treat the person without them paying, we're just lying to ourselves. We have to make a more protective system for the people such that, you know, when stuff like this happens, people are taken care of regardless of whether they have the funds or not. So in a nutshell, it costs a lot of money to be admitted here. And if you're in ICU on ventilator, it can get into like $100,000. But I'm not just going to give you a specific price because every patient is different. And as they are in the hospital, if they have comorbidities, say somebody have CHF, have kidney failure, have diabetes, you have to manage those too. And that would jack up the cost. Over here, they have a cost for a range. If this patient stays 2 to 5 days in the hospital and they have XYZ disease, they have a cost in the system already. How much it should usually is the average cost for that. And that's what the hospital bills. And so, like Dr. Onya said, a lot of people here are covered by insurance. If they don't have insurance, then they have the Medicaid system where the government covers them if they qualify. But if you make too much money, then the government expects you to have insurance. So you pay for your insurance dues. And it just depends from individual to individual what kind of insurance you have. If you have insurance where you're barely paying a lower premium with a high deductible, then it will bring out more money from your pocket than the other person. But a lot of high deductibles, at most maybe $6,000 a year or $10,000 a year. Once you get to that maximum, the insurance takes over. So even if you're owing, you're not going to owe past a certain amount. So it's really different over here. I hope that helped.
I was listening to hear a figure, and you said about $100,000. That's 50 million naira. That's what it costs. That's not what they're charging the patients, but that's what it costs the hospital. You know, I had a patient once on admission whose family, as usual, you see the point if you don't see anybody's bank account, they were not paying. I also find it difficult not to take patients to I mean, it's not even possible to stop treating a patient because they're not paying. That's the truth. So you just have to trust that people will do the right thing by you. And so he was not paying his bills and excuses and stories and so on. And one night he came to visit his dad and he saw them offloading oxygen cylinders. We don't have piped oxygen and all those things. And that time we were receiving 50 to 75 6-meter cubed cylinders, the tall cylinders, every day. So one night he came and he saw them delivering the oxygen cylinders. It freaked him out. We only have 14 beds and we're receiving 50 to 75 cylinders every night. And I think it struck him that they're providing care for my dad at a very high cost. The next day, he sent me a message and said to me, I saw them deliver oxygen last night. You will receive a certain amount of money, a huge amount of money, twice what he had paid before within the next hour, and he paid. So people think you're just there taking advantage. They don't know what it's costing us to do it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Onye. I think another concern this particular person had while asking the question is more like, okay, what happens to patients who are in public hospitals or the public centers, can afford some of these services, but are not giving the services for one reason or the other, and then maybe they cannot access a private. Sometimes it's possible the private center can actually be overbooked. So they cannot access a private center and they're in the public center, but they're not getting this kind of services, even though they can afford it. I think that's the challenge.
Which is why the Lagos state government opened the Bagada Center. Bagada 40-bedded center was actually a suggestion I made.
Yes, you answered it. That's true.
Yeah, that's the truth. So that's why they just recently opened that. So that there you may need to pay a bit. Nothing compared to what you pay to private hospitals because it's a government hospital. The government is heavily subsidizing it, but then you pay a little bit and you get just extra comfort. But even in IDA that is 100% free, I think to a great extent, the one thing I know they used to run out of before was oxygen, but then they deployed an oxygen generating tank. So now they're the plant, so there's no reason to run out of oxygen now. But you see, the truth is, let us remember that people die of COVID all over the world. Like I said, once that horse is bolting, it is now like a matter of luck, honestly, to be able to retrieve the patient. Of course, also knowledge has increased. So we didn't know before about the clotting. So now we put every patient on Clexane to make sure they don't throw an embolus. We didn't know about so many things before about the cytokine storm. We didn't understand the pattern of the cytokine storm. So now we give tocilizumab and arrest the cytokine storm. So there are some things we know now to do. But new problems are emerging. I don't know if Dr. Getty has had the experience. The big challenge we are having now is that of superbugs. So we are having unusual names I've never heard before of organisms growing that are not sensitive to any drug. And that's a real challenge. Yeah.
That has actually been a challenge over here. And I guess because I'm an infectious disease doctor, so I see a lot of those cases. When they get like that, they consult me. But it's because you have such massive inflammation, and our lungs and all usually get microorganisms that stay there and are not harmful. But with this inflammation, it's easier for the pores to be wider, and it's easier for the organisms to now penetrate and cause a superimposed infection. So my advice, even at the beginning of this stuff, when we didn't know so much, I used to advise the hospitalists and the hospitals, please, once they have a pneumonia, I don't care, put them on broad spectrum antibiotics. Antibiotics that will cover both typical organisms and atypical organisms.
An atypical
organisms. That way, we're covering them and giving them a fighting chance. Because think about the virus causing all this problem, and then add bacteria on top of it. It kills people. So once you see a pneumonia,
what will you suggest? What antibiotic will you suggest?
A lot of times it depends on the antibiogram of the hospital, but I do broad spectrum. I would do Zosyn and Vanc, may even add Zitromax for 5 days.
Sorry, I didn't hear the first one. Those are probably brand names I'm not familiar with.
Zosyn is a brand name, piperacillin, tazobactam.
Okay.
And then vancomycin IV, if their kidney function can tolerate. If their kidney function cannot tolerate, I would do linozolid, that is Zyvox. And then I usually would give them Zitromax for 5 days.
Azithromycin.
The atypicals, or if it's not available, I could do doxycycline for 7 days. It'll be 100 milligrams twice a day, or minocycline, or even you can do levofloxacin, moxifloxacin.
Well, what we found now is that the organisms seem to be resistant to all this. So what do you suggest, that we start even before the patient gets a bacterial infection, or maybe 2 or 3 of these at the same time?
That's what I'm telling you. I put them on because vancomycin is going to cover gram-positives, right? Only gram-positives.
Yeah.
Livox, that is linezolid, will only cover gram-positives. The zosine will cover gram-negatives, gram-positives, anaerobes, if they are not extended spectrum beta-lactamase organisms. If they are, I don't care how much zosine, piperacillin, tazobactam, or cefepime, or ceftazidime that you give, it will not cover. It might show phenotypically that it is susceptible, but actually it's not susceptible because it is an extended spectrum beta-lactamase. So in those circumstances, if it is like E. coli or Klebsiella or stuff like that, I would go with the ertapenem. That's Invans. I don't know what's the generic, what is the brand name over there?
I think we have lost most of our participants.
Dr. Getty, I will get your number.
We've turned it into a clinical meeting.
I will get your number and I'll talk to you.
Yes, I think we have.
I'm sorry about that.
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it because I'm a pharmacist, so it's fun. But I don't think the others are.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Okay.
Thank you so very much. God bless you too. God bless you too. So I was enjoying the flow. So some of the questions have already been answered. Like this one says, what is the truth to the blood clots after the AstraZeneca vaccine going around? I think Dr. Getty already answered this extensively in your presentation. I'll just keep that question, but I wanted the participants. So I'm handling the questions and answers from participants here live now. Some of the earlier questions I gave you were from people who submitted earlier. So now we have participants here live now who have questions that need to be answered. So that was the first one on the blood clots due to AstraZeneca vaccine. Dr. Getty has handled that effectively. So the next question is, any fatal health risk associated with failure to take or missing? Is there any fatal health risk associated with miss any of the flu vaccine, at least before the entire population achieve herd immunity? I don't know if Dr. Getty wants to help us with that.
I didn't get the question completely. Your voice went off in one point. It's any associated risk in what?
Okay. With failure to take or to miss a follow-up dose of the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine.
Yes. So earlier I said I did take the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. I took one in December and I took one early in January. The issue is that when you take it, the first dose, right, you produce immunity. Usually after 2 weeks, you produce some reasonable immunity. The second dose is your booster shot that increases the effectiveness to about 90-something%. So the risk will be that if you take one dose, right, it might get you to maybe 70% or even 80%, which is good enough, right? But you want to take that second dose to keep your immune response at a high level, and that would give you a better chance of preventing to get COVID-19. That's the only risk. If it doesn't, it's not going to turn around and do something bad to you, but it will decrease the effectiveness of your vaccination if you don't take that booster dose. Now, there is a single dose vaccine that we have currently in America. It was just approved in the last less than 2 weeks. It's Johnson & Johnson. They call it the Janssen vaccine. It's a one-dose vaccine. It's about 72% effective. However, we have to remember that it's been the trials were done at the time when we had developed resistance. So they are trying a second dose version of it. There's a trial going on now to see if it will boost effectiveness of it if it was a 2-dose vaccine. However, I do want people to remember that whichever vaccine that's available, we should go ahead and take. All of them have shown to decrease morbidity and mortality. In fact, after 28 days, there were no mortalities if you took the vaccine. Now, you might still get mild COVID in those ones that are escaping the neutralizing antibodies, but it still was able to prevent severe COVID and COVID deaths. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Getty. Thank you so very much.
There are some
the question,
Q&A
next question, which is why do people have to take COVID-19 vaccine twice? So that has answered that question. The other question is, why is there so much pressure with the enforcement of the vaccine? Why are people being told that they may not be able to travel or work if they don't have the vaccine? If there wasn't this overwhelming push by the government, people would be more willing to take it. But the fact that many governments and organizations are putting punitive measures to those who don't want to makes it smell very fishy. An anonymous participant.
All right. Do you want me to take that?
Yes, please.
Okay. So you have to remember when COVID came, right? World economy shut down. Any government will not want their economy to shut down because it's going to eventually spell the failure of that government. So if it looks like government actually invested in this vaccine, is to be able to get the population back to normal, to get the economy back to the right footing, to be able to get our children back to school, to normal economic activity. Any government that don't have a strong economy is going to fail. So that hopefully answers the question of why the government wants to see us get the vaccine. The need for passport to get a vaccine passport is country by country. But you have to remember that nobody can force you to take this vaccine. Nobody. Now, if you don't take the vaccine, it's not necessarily a punitive measure. The government of that country also has the right to protect its citizens, to protect itself, because if you come in with the virus, you have a chance, a likelihood of infecting somebody in that country, right? And then those people will now go about their business, infecting other people. America is so huge, they have 50 states plus territories. So any one of us, all I have to do, jump on a plane and go anywhere else. I don't need a visa. And that's how you infect people from one state to the other, from one locality to the other. Before you know it, they have another infection in their hands and they're trying to do public health measure to control it. So why not control it from the very beginning? If you're not vaccinated, now it's not a policy of America, but I think they will bring some of that later on. What they're doing right now is to say you have to do the COVID test. If you don't do the COVID test and get negative, they're not letting you come in. And I think that's reasonable. And when you come in, they're requiring you to quarantine for some numbers of days. Some other countries have taken the issue further and say, you know what, you have to have a COVID vaccine, even amongst their own citizens, to go to the gym, to go to the restaurants, like in Israel right now. If you go to Israel, they are doing mass vaccination. If you don't want to take it, nobody's going to force you. But however, they're not going to allow you make a decision that would affect other people. You can only make a decision that will affect you and your family. You cannot make the decision for other people. When if you get COVID, you now take it to the other people without restriction and infect them. I don't think that is fair also. So we have to balance it. Nobody is punishing anybody, but we have to take certain measures. Thank you.
Sorry, Dr. Vert, do you want to also talk about the fact that there will be variants, new variants?
Yes.
And therefore, please talk about that.
We already have new variants. You people have heard of the South African variant, the UK variant, the Brazilian variant. Now we have the New York variant, we have the California variant. So if we do not get vaccinated, right, what is going to happen is the organism is going to keep perpetuating itself in the environment. As the organism is perpetuating itself, it's replicating more. What is a variant? A variant is a mutation that occurs from the older organism to a newer one. In the bit of this organism replicating itself, mistakes can happen. Where you remember when I was presenting and I showed how the protein are being done? Well, instead of doing UGU, it might code for UGA. That has essentially changed that particular virus, the protein chain. That's what has changed it, right? Now, you prepared vaccine for you prepared UGU, not UGA or UGC. It may escape that vaccine that you prepared. It may not work as well. So the more replication we're having because of more infection, this is not going to go away. Before we know it, we're fighting another battle. We have new variants that might have been changed totally from the one that the vaccine was given for. And we might now need revaccination, or we might need to make the vaccine multivalent, meaning having different strains. We're going to always be changing it from behind, almost like the flu vaccine, right? So if it is in the interest of the whole community, of the whole world, for the governments to say, listen, let us put certain measures that will decrease the rate of infection. Because if you don't decrease the rate of infection, you will continue getting variants because of the organism keep replicating and making mistakes in itself. And those mistakes, we call it mistakes, they help them adapt and live longer. And so we will be propagating the virus if we don't take these measures. Also, I want to say this. People should remember, keep social distancing, wear your mask, wash your hands frequently until we get to herd immunity. Dr. Ngozi properly explained the herd immunity, so I'm not going to go in there. But we all need to do our part. We all are responsible for each other. And so if you find a part of the population that's not doing what they're supposed to do, they will help us to perpetuate this virus. And before we know it, we might have another variant and be taking vaccination every year. And we don't want that.
If I may add, a good example are the anti-vaxxers in America, where suddenly illnesses like measles, chickenpox, illnesses that had been eradicated from the population came back simply because some people refused to take vaccines. So, like you rightly, I think the most important thing you said is that you have a right to not take the vaccine. I have a right to say, don't come to my house if you haven't taken the vaccine. I don't want to catch the virus from you. So that's the same thing. I have, as the leader of the country, I have the right to say, don't bring your new Nigerian variant into my country, Estonia, because you refuse to take the vaccine. So nobody is forcing you, but it will constrain you because other people have rights too.
Thank you so much, Dr. Onye. Thank you so much, Dr. Getty. Thank you very much. These are things that we need to hear, and it's obvious that yes. Thank you very much. Another question is, how efficient is our natural immune vaccines weaken?
You're breaking up, Chine.
The question. Okay, let me ask again. How efficient is our natural immune protection, given that it varies among humans? Won't vaccines weaken our natural immune system?
No.
Did you hear me?
Yes. No. The answer to your question.
The answer is no, right?
Yeah. Vaccines don't weaken your immune system.
It's no.
So what you have to understand is what is immunity? Your body produces. So like every virus, bacteria, a fungus, they all are presenting they are antigens to the body. Every single organism, the body now says, oh, this organism, I'm going to produce antibodies against you specifically. So producing antibody for one organism does not decrease your immunity in no way. You're just amassing more immunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Getty, for that quick response. So Nigerians have used ivermectin in excess. That's what everybody's using. Almost everybody's using ivermectin now to prevent COVID-19. What do you have to say to them? Someone is asking, Nigerians who have used ivermectin may not need vaccine. Is it true? What's your take on this?
Sorry, may I answer this question?
Okay.
I have a patient on ventilator in my office, in my hospital now. She came in from the east, from I think Anambra State. She was going to attend a funeral or wedding, some event. 74-year-old lady, she took ivermectin. The mother of the doctor, she took ivermectin. Immediately after the event, she took ivermectin. She's now on ventilator for COVID. I don't think ivermectin is foolproof. Nothing is foolproof. Not even remdesivir is foolproof. The antibodies is what will be foolproof. There's no known prophylaxis other than the antibodies from vaccines or from catching an infection or the wearing of the mask and keeping a physical distance. So I just told you the example of a patient. I have another patient again too who came in today, but their own infection is not for admission. By managing as outpatient, they also took ivermectin as prophylaxis.
Yeah, so sometimes in medicine, we treat our anxieties. Both the patient or maybe the doctor, we can treat our anxiety. It doesn't mean the thing is working. It's just like the person thinks like they are doing something. Nobody likes it when they are powerless over something, like they are telling you, okay, there's no medication, you can just go and buy against this. You see, I told you earlier on that this disease, COVID-19, is like you're building a plane and you're trying to fly it. That's what one of my colleagues said, and I have copied it, which is true. We are still trying to get a medication. In fact, right now, they have the antibodies, Antasivimab and other antibodies, monoclonal antibodies here for people that have mild to moderate COVID, right? So they give them that to kind of ward it off. But those are the things that have done better. For people with severe COVID, they could take steroids like dexamethasone. Remdesivir, what it has done is decrease the viral load and allow you to be able to discharge the patient earlier from the hospital. It does not show any benefit in terms of mortality per se. So having said that, to couch everything that's going on right now, ivermectin, even the company that produces it is Merck. They have put out a very lengthy disclaimer to say they have no reason to see in the mechanism of action why ivermectin will work for COVID. There has not been any real proof. There have been little studies that have been done here and there. Those studies don't amount to much in the clinical world where I practice, because the numbers that were used or the way the studies were designed had flaws. So for us to have clinical data to say, okay, we did randomized control study in this amount of people, this showed benefit. In the study that was done in Lagos, for instance, they had 62 patients. The 62 patients, they divided into 3 groups. So averagely 20 people in each group. One group had placebo, meaning they just got regular stuff that wasn't ivermectin. Another group got 6 milligrams, another group got 12 milligrams, and they had it twice a week. That was it. And they showed that the group that had 12 milligrams, there was benefit. You cannot judge by such a very small number of patients. That is a study that would usually be a starter to say, okay, number one, it's safe, right? It's not like, people would die, they take ivermectin. Ivermectin is already approved for, worms that we get in Africa. So it's not fatal, but you can't just take, it does have side effects. Every medication, including aspirin, including paracetamol, they all have some side effect. But a lot of times in medicine, we look at, are the benefits outweighing the risk? If the benefits outweigh the risk, we use the medication. If the risk outweighs the benefit, we don't. In this case of ivermectin for COVID, we have not established that ivermectin is beneficial. But there are some given risk. And in addition to the risk of relaxing that, oh, I have taken the protection, I've taken the COVID protection, it's also a risk that can kill us because it is wrong assumption. So I say all this to say that over here, the IDSA, which I'm a fellow of, Infectious Disease Society of America, have not given a blessing to ivermectin because we don't have the studies. Even the WHO or CDC, all of them have not given a green light to ivermectin because why? We don't have the studies. These people put down a meta-analysis. I want to explain to people what is a meta-analysis. A meta-analysis is like you grab studies from different people, different countries and all, and you put it together and you try to make it look like, okay, 62 people here, 200 people here, 100 people here. And then you say, oh, we got like 1,000 or 2,000 people. It's not the same. It's like comparing apples and oranges. They are not the same thing. You have to do a correct, proper study. I think there is a study going on right now. Bill Gates and some other people are sponsoring it. We will have our answer hopefully before the end of the year to see if ivermectin works or not. There is actually a proper study going on. I'll wait for that. Thank you.
Okay, may I make a comment in response? For once, I want to disagree with you a bit, Dr. Getty. And I will say, if you remember the story I told about Edward Jenner, it's about observation and experimentation. I'm a physician like Edward Jenner. I'm not a scientist like you. I'm just a clinician, not a researcher. So when my granddaughter got a fever in May of last year, after her nanny had tested positive for COVID, I wasn't willing to stick a swab stick up her nostril. And so I gave her one time. I had read somewhere that they were using ivermectin in Bangladesh. I'm talking about May last year. At this point also, the government was being very strict about don't give this, don't give that, only give vitamins and so on. But I thought this is my granddaughter. No one's going to tell me what to do. I gave her 1 tablet of ivermectin, 3 milligrams. Her fever ended. When her parents eventually caught the infection and other people in the home, I gave them ivermectin. But I was very quiet at the time because at that time, government was being very regulatory, as they tend to be in your own neck of the woods for good reason, okay? But I didn't ever confidently tell anybody because I had no evidence. People still ask me today, what is the dose for prophylaxis? And I say, I don't know that there's any dose. I think like remdesivir, I don't have scientific evidence beyond observation and my experience, and I've seen quite a few patients. I think like remdesivir, ivermectin has some antiviral property. So it stops the replication of the virus if it is used early in the first week. So it shortens the course of the illness like remdesivir. Probably remdesivir is a more potent antiviral than ivermectin, which actually was initially an antiparasitic drug. Also like hydroxychloroquine, which was also antiprotozoal. So I think, but is it 100% no? And I also will always give the proviso that 80% of people will have recovered irrespective of what we do. So we've given people ivermectin, they got better. Is it because of the ivermectin or is it because they will have recovered anyway? I will not stick out my neck and say it's because they will have recovered. I mean, because it was ivermectin. But does that mean I don't give ivermectin? I do give ivermectin because it's a relative, as a pediatrician, it's a relatively harmless drug. Nothing is without harm, but it's a relative compared to hydroxychloroquine. I never bought into the hydroxychloroquine groove, but the ivermectin, yes, I will give it if there's proven COVID. But as a prophylactic, also for the good reason you gave, that people will now suddenly become reckless. I don't want to wear a mask. I want them to see my nice makeup. So let me take ivermectin and go to the wedding. For that reason, I don't subscribe to ivermectin as the prophylactic. But I do, like you said, we only know what we know, and time will tell us. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. So I actually we're agreeing because like you said, 81% of the population that get COVID will be fine. Whether you give them anything, they'll recover. So was it the ivermectin that did it? We don't know. That's why we need a better study. That's exactly what I said. And you see, I treated a lot of people at home. I did not give them hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, and they have recovered. Majority of my patients have recovered, and I didn't give them any of this stuff. And I say this to say that I was one of the physicians when COVID started and they had to put it in the protocol to give hydroxychloroquine. I gave my patients hydroxychloroquine. I was also one of the first physicians in the hospital to say, this thing is doing nothing for these patients. But I was just waiting for the CDC to release their record. The same day they released their record, I just took everybody off of it because I was already feeling that way as a clinician, that I had to wait for the proof. I didn't want to take away something that might be beneficial to the patients. So my own clinical experience was it wasn't doing anything for the patients. So I treat HIV, right? People that have AIDS, I treat them back to normal. You will never believe that they ever have HIV. I treat a lot of infections, people that are almost dying, and they come back to life because medicine work. But the clinician, I've been a doctor now, like you are being older in this profession than me, and I've been a doctor for 20-something years. And I know, and as an infectious disease doctor, when the medication works, you don't need anybody to tell you it works. Ivermectin does have some anti-inflammatory properties, just like hydroxychloroquine. So, but we have to prove that it actually works. And that's the study I alluded to that's going on. I think it's in Brazil. So we're going to wait and see what.
We've had one study in Luth that had been published recently.
That was the one I was referring to. They had 62 patients.
That the numbers were few.
Yeah,
the numbers were few.
Otherwise it was a good design. It's just the number that have a problem. If they had told me they had 1,000, 2,000 people, they had that result, I will buy into it. I don't care what other people say. I'm a clinician. I look at the results for myself and make my own decisions.
Thank you so very much, Doctor. Thank you so much. In fact, this was really important because I know that even on social media, I saw a lot of influencers go online to say that they've gotten their own bottle of ivermectin, and so they are protected from COVID-19. It was very, very poor. It was, in fact, the last 3 months or so, it was really, really a very
sensitive issue to discuss, especially since influencers who had no information whatsoever were going about sharing the good news of ivermectin. So it was important that we address this extensively today. Thank you so much, Dr. Ngozi. Thank you so much, Dr. Getty. God bless you too. So there's a video Dr. Ngozi was speaking about. So Shino has the video. Dr. Ngozi, would you like Shino to share?
Yes, please. But just before you share the video, this video does not invalidate what Dr. Getty said about ivermectin. So I'm not saying this now to promote ivermectin as a drug. I'm saying this to show that people need to be monitored properly. So you can ignore the fact that you can take ivermectin, you may not take ivermectin, but the point of the video is the progression of the illness. And I think I should make that point.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ngozi, for clarifying. So we're almost coming to the end. After the video, Dr. Ngozi, there's a question for you before the video. Someone wants you to expatiate more on the equitable distribution you were talking about earlier. What can you expatiate more on the equitable distribution within Lagos of the vaccines that are currently available and the ones that are coming in the future?
The way it's being done all over the world, the way it was done in America, the way it was done in Israel, countries that have in the UK, the first set of people to give are the frontline workers. And for obvious reasons, not because I'm one, not because we are one, but because if the frontline workers fall ill, who will look after the other patients who fall ill? So the frontline workers will get it first, irrespective of whether they are wealthy, whether they are old, whether they are young, whether they are male, whether they are female, Yoruba, Igbo, or Hausa. Every frontline worker in Lagos. And the frontline workers are categorized as healthcare workers, the police, and the rapid response squad. The Commissioner for Health was very clear. And if you look at what, he gave a press conference yesterday. When those people, when they have enough to cover all those people, so there's a link that has been sent to all healthcare, and healthcare workers are not doctors, they're frontline workers. So it includes the ambulance drivers, it includes the cleaners in the hospital, but people who are exposed, most exposed to the virus, just in the course of their work. When they have been protected, then the next group of people who will be protected, so it's going to be phased. The next group will be people who are 50 and over, those who need protection from the virus because they might get critically ill. So if you are 50 and above and you live in Lagos and you register, you will get in the next batch, the next set of people to be vaccinated. It might still be within the 700, but we've also been told that we're expecting 18 million doses in Nigeria. So we got 4 million. We've now paid for 18 million doses that will arrive in the next 6 weeks or so. So after the first group have been vaccinated, then we go to the next level. Nobody will be compelled. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Then after those people, and that's what equitable means. So as long as you qualify, you are 50 years and above, doesn't depend on how wealthy you are or how poor you are, doesn't depend on how your gender, your race, your tribe, your religion, nothing. It's equitable. You just need to be 50 and above, because when you're 50 and above, you're more at risk of getting critical illness. Then they'll be vaccinated. And they're not just those who are 50 and above, but even those who are younger, but we think have special risk factors. A good example will be a diabetic person who is 48 or 45 is also at risk. Who is 32 is also at risk. They will be vaccinated. And then after that, it will be free for anybody who wants to be vaccinated. So that's equitable. Equitable means a level playing field. So the playing field is made level. You're a frontline worker, you get it. Then after they've vaccinated, protected all the frontline workers, then they will go to the next level of people, 50 and above, because you are at the risk of falling critically ill, then you get it. And then after that, we'll go to the next level and so on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Onya. Thank you very much. Shino, is the video available now, please? So we're waiting for Shino to share the video, please. And I'm checking if I have any other questions. I don't think there's none. Dr. Onya, you're mute. Are you speaking?
Yes. I said if he's unable to share the video, I can share a slide that says the video puts it better than I will put it, but I can share the slide, just one slide, if you can't share the video. So let me know if you want me to share the slide.
Okay. Okay, let's okay. Okay, Dr. Anya, please, can you share the slide? I don't think you can find the video. Thank you so much, Dr. Anya. Are you mute? I can't hear Dr. Anya.
Yes, I'm mute, but I'm trying to look for the slide amongst my many. Okay, so it's this slide. So the stages of the infection. So the viremic phase, when the virus is multiplying, the first 7 days. If the right intervention is given in that first 7 days, then it amounts to shutting the stable door before the horse bolts, and we keep the horse in the stable. So early presentation, because after the first 7 days, then the virus has spread from the upper respiratory tract and has gone into the pneumonia phase that we talked about earlier. At that point, you see, after the viremic phase, everybody tends to feel a bit better after the virus starts multiplying, and then they think that it's gone, it's gone this way, okay? But the truth is, some people, rather than going this way, a few, so 80% will go like this, and after 7 days is over. Some, instead of going down, after 7 days will go up because they're going into the pneumonia. And then of those people that go into the pneumonia, that's when they start having a bit of breathlessness, oxygen starts going down. Some of them will come down too and recover. However, 1 to 5% of people, but that number gets up to 20% of people of certain group will now, rather than get better, will go into what we call the cytokine storm. And when they go into that cytokine storm, that's when there's nothing you can do anywhere in the world. It becomes a postcode lottery. If you're lucky, you make it. If you're not lucky, so maybe not a postcode. I don't know what code lottery to be, but it becomes a lottery, whether you will survive or not. So my own word is, if you are older, and well, in Nigeria, we're using 50 as a cutoff, but my own studies have shown me that it's those who are 60 and above who tend, not to say, I lost a 32-year-old pregnant girl, so it's not to say young people don't die, but that's an outlier. So most of the patients were between 60 and 79 that died. So if you fall in that age group and you have COVID, please present early. That's number one. If your body mass index is above 30, and that's a whole lot of us, please present early, because in the UK they say when obesity increases your risk of severe illness by 5 times, multiples of 5. Okay, so if you are overweight, men tend to fall ill, and also men tend to die more than women. Only 21% of the people we lost were women. The remaining, 79 were men. Okay, so that's another risk factor. Then people who are diabetics. So there are a couple of things we do, and Dr. Getty may listen to this now. So we do what we call an assessment. I also do a lot of my own consultations remotely, but the patients go to the hospital where blood samples are taken, and we look out for some things. When we see elevated D-dimer, we immediately put them on blood thinners. Elevated to a point, we put them on blood thinners. When we see the inflammatory markers, and I use the CRP, it's high at up to a certain level as well. We have cutoff values. We immediately put them on steroids. We give all our patients who are positive ivermectin for treatment at 200 micrograms per kg per day for 3 days. We do it early in the treatment as well. So that's the standard for everybody. I feel it's a fairly harmless drug. It might be doing some benefits. Then a lot of patients, like I said, diabetic, if their blood sugars are out of control, then we need to put them on insulin and control them. So we're able to do those things that will ensure, then of course the antibiotics. So we usually will use azithromycin or doxycycline for outpatients to ensure that they don't get a bacterial superinfection on their pneumonia. I forgot to mention, we also will do a chest x-ray. So the chest x-ray will let us know if they're already in the pneumonia phase, then the patients who we should admit. So my point is to say that this thing comes in phases. Everybody tends to feel better initially, but then you feel better and then suddenly it becomes a more serious illness. And that's the point. Maybe what we can do is we can share the video with everybody who's online, because I think it's very impactful when you listen to the lady.
Okay, I think all of us registered for this, so definitely, I'm sure they will be able to.
Shino has the video now.
Oh.
Okay, Shino has the video now. I think we have already. We're looking at time now, so maybe we should just share with all who have registered, and then because what do you think, Miss? What do you think, GM?
Can you hear me, Chine?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Oh, okay. I was trying to comment earlier. Okay, well, I think
Okay,
because of time, I'm not sure our participants, in terms of time, it would be more appropriate to share it with everyone via mail, because we need to shut down anyway,
Okay.
so we don't take advantage of people's time.
Okay.
However, I have a question I wanted to ask Dr. Onya.
Okay.
Because she mentioned the possibility of a second wave, and the way you sound
a third wave.
Sorry, a third wave.
This is second wave. We're talking about third wave. Yes.
Yes, third wave. And I immediately remembered, I think 2 months ago, I was watching the news, and I saw the Honorable Commissioner for Health in Lagos when he was making a remark on the gas plant that was installed in Lagos. And of course, speaking directly to the readiness of the state government, particularly if there was, an instance where the third wave came, the fourth wave and the fifth wave. And when I heard that, I was really concerned. And I'm very certain that a lot of people are concerned as well in this regard. How certain do you think that a third wave will come on a scale of 1 to 10, Dr. Onya?
For us to get rid of these waves, we need to have attained at least 50 to 60% herd immunity. I don't think we are close. We haven't done population studies, but I don't think we are close to attaining herd immunity. Even if we look at the numbers of people who they say have caught the infection in Lagos, and we multiply it by 10, given that underreporting, who remembers what the most recent figure was for Lagos? The total number who have caught it in Lagos. I think it's about 5,000 or so. About 5,000, maybe even 6,000. Multiply that by 10 and say these are underreported cases. So we say maybe 10,000 people. 5,000 times 10. That would be 50,000 people in a population of 200 million. That's nothing. And how many of us have received vaccines? So if just looking at that alone, that even if we say 100,000 people have caught the infection in Lagos because of underreporting, the reported cases are 5,000. What 100,000 out of 20 million? So we are very far from herd immunity. So until we attain herd immunity, as long as we have occasion to come together again And that will happen like Easter. That's what drove the second wave was Christmas. You see, so people will come together. People are tired of this funny life. I'm very tired of the funny life we lived. Very, very tired. I like to travel. I like to go out to have a drink and things. I haven't been able to do that in 1 year. I've forgotten what it was I did for the first time in 1 year, and I felt like a human being again. I think maybe I went to the beach or something. No, I went swimming. For the first time in 1 year, and I felt, wow, 1 year I haven't gone swimming. So the truth is everybody wants their life back. So as soon as we have the slightest opportunity, we will congregate again, and we don't have herd immunity. And people are not adhering to wearing their masks and the physical distancing. We want to hug our friends. We haven't seen them in so long. People are suffering from skin hunger. We don't touch people anymore, except people who are married. So for all those reasons, as long as the immunity level is low in the population, the likelihood of waves will continue to exist once we have events that will bring us together. So the one thing we can all do to ensure to reduce the number of waves and then the bump of the waves, so there shouldn't be very big waves again, just small waves, is for us to make sure we adhere to the protocols, wear the mask, keep the physical distance. If you need to cough into your arm, those kind of things, and then take the vaccine as soon as it's available. If we can do these things, then we will speed up getting our lives back, taking back our lives from this virus.
I do want to add something in addition, everything true. What we should register, and each one of us should take back to our families, our friends, and our communities, is that there's a long way, but it's a safe way. We can all resume our lives back to some semblance of normal if we follow these things. Otherwise, it will be lengthening the process. I talked earlier about the variants and the fact that if we don't do this physical distancing, protecting ourselves with masks, washing our hands frequently, using hand sanitizer, all the other measures, we are just helping this virus give it more life. And as the virus keeps replicating, it keeps mutating, then we're going to have newer variants that's going to persist amongst us and cause more infection. So the normalcy that we want to get back to, we may never get there. And we will lose our friends, even our own lives, those of our family members, members of our community. We all need to protect each other. If there is any take-home message, I think this is it. We should continue doing those things and then resume our life in some semblance of normalcy while protecting ourselves, our families, and others. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Onya and Dr. Getty.
Thank you for putting on your mask. I don't know why you put it on.
No, I moved to an area where there are people around, so I had to
put it on. A gentleman just walks behind you now, and he had his mask on his chin like that. You see, because the truth is that the real problem, and I know everybody's going to be hating on me now, are the young people. The old people, you don't have to beg us. When I'm walking, I go power walking. When I see people coming in this direction, I quickly cross the road. I'm ducking and diving everywhere I go. I have this mask because this mask only protects me 15%. It protects you from, so what you've done now only protects you 15%. But what you're doing is you're protecting people around you 85%. So when I want full protection, I bring out my N95 mask, that gives me 95% protection. So I know what to use where. So you don't need to beg the old people, The young people who feel invulnerable, and they are invulnerable. The problem is that they will keep infecting with the older ones. And as long as we keep perpetuating this thing, we will not get our lives back. We will not get our lives back. Unfortunately, with the baby boomers, the ones who are most at risk, are the ones who also run the world economy for now. So they are the ones who run businesses. And I will say, if you don't take a vaccine, don't come back to work. There's nothing you can do. You work for me. You see what I mean?
Yeah. True. Very true. Very true.
So the earlier we all comply and get rid of this thing and kick COVID out, the better for everybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Onya.
And I'm here in my house and I have my mask on my table because sometimes strange people come into my house. The carpenter comes in to fix something. Quickly, my mask goes on. I have a box to give them. As they're coming into my house, they must wear their mask while they're in my house. Sorry about
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Ngozi. Dr. Getty, do you have any final notes for us before we?
Oh, that was my final notes. Let us remember that the mask wearing and all the other measures are protecting us, our families, our friends, our communities, and to kick the virus out. If we want to kick this virus out, we have to do those things. And then when the vaccine becomes available to you, please take it.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Getty. I think there's a poll. We're supposed to run a poll now. I don't know if we're still going to run the poll, but we want to run a poll to see how people are responding towards this training. Now that you've heard all of this, what's your mindset? What's your new mindset about COVID-19 and about protecting ourselves better?